What can we expect so far about the 2019 iPhones? And we're sorting all the conflicting rumors about the iPhone XR sales. Let's get right to the core of this week's Apple News and Rumors. Next year's iPhones could look a lot like this year's iPhones. Many reports at this point, including one from longtime Apple analyst Michico를, suggest that Apple will be keeping the same three sizes of devices in the three price tiers. Now, it's pretty disappointing considering this was supposed to be the S year for Apple, but in light of recent history, it's not surprising. At least it's not surprising to me. Before the iPhone X, Apple retained the same general design for 3 years in a row with the iPhone 6, 6S, and 7, so it comes as no surprise. Now, the latest 9 to 5 Mac report suggests that one of these devices, likely the more expensive iPhone XS Max, could actually lose some weight thanks to a new type of OLED screen made by Samsung that would allow for a slimmer, lighter form factor. Now, the report also goes on to say that given production limitations at this point, it would only be able to apply this change to one of the three new models, and obviously the higher end, heavier one makes the most sense. But even with this brand new OLED screen, you'll probably still have to deal with the notch on these new phones. Reports from Forbes and 9 to 5 Mac suggest that Apple is having a hard time getting rid of the notch on its newer devices, because it still needs that true depth camera array on the front for Face ID. Now, other devices like the Oppo Find and Vivo Nex have already figured out a way to make a truly bezel-less display, and Samsung is rumored to be working on an in-screen fingerprint reader that would also allow it to be truly bezel-less. But don't expect this from Apple in 2019. Now, with no major design changes to come, and apparently no smaller iPhone SE to look forward to, that leaves little for Apple to wow us with, at least in terms of phones. Of course, the 2019 iPhones could still have redeeming qualities like much better battery life, which is always welcome, or a much better camera. Qualcomm just announced its new chipsets, which allows to have a blurred background effect on video. Now, that would be a great feature for the next iPhones, even though Apple doesn't really use Qualcomm chips. They also potentially could switch to a USB-C like the iPads from this year, but that wouldn't make as much sense on an iPhone. And they're also said to be including better AR features. Now, whether or not it would be a software update or hardware, it's tough to know, kind of like ARKit 2 this year, which brought the Measure app and multiplayer support to the iPhones. The latest patent suggests AR features being used for something that at least I would use a lot more: figuring out which one is your ride. Seriously, there's been many times where I've either jumped in the wrong car or scared the crap out of poor drivers because I didn't know which Lyft or Uber car was mine. Now, the app would allow you to point the camera and figure out which one of the sea of cars is yours. It would also work the other way and allow drivers to pinpoint who called the Lyft. But the more exciting changes to the iPhone could be coming in 2020, and sometimes it's worth taking a look at the companies that provide the materials for the iPhone to get a sense of what we can expect from Apple's devices. Take Intel, for example. The company just announced its latest chip, which comes with 5G support. Now, it's a little too late to implement it in 2019 iPhones, but definitely by 2020. This would be a little further behind than some of its competitors, but by 2020 there'll be a lot more network support, and 5G would actually make more sense on an iPhone. Now let's take a look at Corning, the company that's been providing the Gorilla Glass for the iPhone since basically the golden age of Steve Jobs. And it's now working on an ultra-thin foldable glass, which we got a chance to see for ourselves. Now again, it's still in early development phases, but it could potentially cover the next generation of foldable devices, including one from Apple. It's no secret that companies like Samsung are starting to adopt the foldable phone trend, announcing plans to make a foldable device, and Apple could be next. And the rumors about disappointing sales and production cuts to the iPhone XR are continuing to add up this week. Now, Japan Displays, the screen supplier, is the latest iPhone supplier to report that it's cutting its forecast growth for 2019. This according to Forbes. And then we saw this report from Bloomberg, which actually says the complete opposite, and that 2 of Apple's main suppliers are actually reporting growth in the last month. Now, what does this all mean? It means you really can't trust the rumors, and you probably already knew that. Now, the sad thing is, we probably will never really know the truth to this matter, especially now that Apple's quarterly earning reports will not include an itemized breakdown of unit sales. Now let's talk Apple Watch. Last week, Apple finally launched the Ecg App for the Apple Watch Series 4, which we've been waiting for since its launch, and it's already helping save lives. It also launched right alongside the irregular heart rhythm notification that actually comes to all Apple Watches except for the first generation with the update to watchOS 5.1.2. That's actually the reason why we skipped last week's episode of Apple Core. I was able to test out this feature early, and I took it to the doctor's office to compare it to a traditional EKG reading, and it actually held up. In fact, it showed that I had something somewhat interesting about my heart that I'm going to have to get checked out later on. And apparently I'm not the only one benefiting from this feature. Since its rollout barely a week ago, user Ed Dentel on Reddit posted that he had received an atrial fibrillation notification on his Apple Watch. Now, the 46-year-old was interviewed by Good Morning America, and he actually said he'd been having chest pains earlier this year and that the doctor hadn't been able to diagnose it sooner, but that once he got the information from the Apple Watch along with his hospital tests, he was able to get a full atrial fibrillation diagnosis, and he will now be getting treated. So it could have potentially saved his life. And you can expect a lot more health features from Apple in the coming years. The company is rumored to be working on a glucose and blood pressure monitor for the Apple Watch. It also just got a patent for biometric sensors in the AirPods that could be interesting in the coming years. And Apple has just released its first sleep tracker since acquiring the sleep tracking company Beddit in 2017. As of last Friday, you can now buy the Beddit 3.5 sleep monitor on the Apple Store. This is a thin 2mm strip that you put under your mattress, and it connects with your iPhone and Apple Watch, and it can measure things like your sleep time, obviously, your heart rate, your breathing patterns, your bedroom temperature, and your snoring. But then again, if you're married, you probably don't need a tracker to tell you that you're snoring. That does it for this week's show, but in the meantime, I'm still collecting your 2019 wish list for what you most want to see from Apple. So let me know on the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter, and come back next week for more Apple Core.